If you know me at all, I don't have to tell you that I'm a massive fan of the GPD XD. This little gadget is quite literally the holy grail of emulation I've searched for my whole life. And I finally got my hands on its follow-up, the GPD XD Plus. Now, the question is, should you get one too? So, for the unfamiliar, though if you're on my channel, there's no way you're not familiar with this thing. The GPD XD is an Android-based emulation console made by Chinese manufacturer Gamepad Digital. Small, gaming-centric electronics is kind of their niche, and they're quite good at it. In regards to the form factor, the original GPD XD is somewhat of a Nintendo 3DS XL clone, which is a nice Goldilocks zone for me personally. It's small enough to be very portable, yet large enough that holding it for a long period of time isn't all that uncomfortable. I have a lot of problems with the new 3DS, for instance, because it is a little bit smaller. That one is closer in size to the DS Lite, which I personally love, but again, long play sessions, they do a number on your fingers. Around hour 2, it starts cramping up real good. There is a lot to love about this thing. The clamshell design protects the screen when not in use. The battery is a generous 6,000 milliamp hour, and being powered by Android means not only there's a plethora of consoles you can emulate, but also loading games in it is a far more convenient affair than what I was used to back in the day of, say, modded PSPs. Of course, we have to address the elephant in the room. As with all things emulation, you're talking about what is technically piracy. Now, a lot of these games are not commercially available in any format. You'd have to scour garage sales and used gaming stores, and even when you do find the games that you're trying to play, it's not like the proceeds of those sales are going towards the developers. So, again, legal gray area, we're talking, it's always the case when we're talking about emulation, and I have to put up the disclaimer of you should only download games you already own, but if you're okay with that, then let's move on. Now, great as it was, the GPD XD, like all things, wasn't perfect, and that's when the GPD XD Plus comes in. I was sent this little guy by the folks over at droidbox.co.uk. I think that's how you pronounce that URL. I actually realize now, these British websites, I never actually said them out loud. Is that co.uk or co.uk? Let me know. The Droidbox guys are one of the premier retailers for the GPD XD. As with most similar niche devices, this isn't exactly something you can just find in a regular brick and mortar store. I'm going to leave their link in the description. Now, as you can see, the GPD XD and the GPD XD Plus are virtually identical. Most of the changes are under the hood. First, the hardware itself. The main thing Gamepad Digital did was swap out the aging Rockchip RK3288 chip, which was originally released in 2014. That thing is kind of old. And interestingly, that is the main reason behind this refresh. Gamepad Digital still wanted to put out GPD XDs, but that Rockchip processor has been discontinued. In its place, you'll find the newer MediaTek MT8176 processor, which at this point, yes, it's 2 years old, but it's significantly better than the original system on a chip under the hood of the OG XD, especially, and this is important, when it comes to power consumption. Due to that new processor, the GPD XD Plus is way better at power management, and not just while you're using it. The GPD XD Plus also has longer battery life on standby, often outliving my original GPD XD when both are left alone for a few days. That was something that frustrated me a lot with the original GPD XD. If I leave this thing to its own devices, like 2 days later I go to play, I don't know, Castlevania, it's dead. This upset me a lot. This guy tends to stay alive quite a little bit longer. And the processor isn't everything. They also double the RAM from 2 to 4 gigabytes, which is welcome, though the original GPD XD was already no slouch. The GPD XD Plus also supports Vulkan, a 3D graphics engine which helps performance in emulators that enable it. All of this extra power allows the GPD XD Plus to run consoles the original couldn't dream of, namely Dolphin, the GameCube emulator. Now, don't get too excited just yet. Performance still isn't that great. Perhaps it's going to take the developers a little bit of time to work with the extra power under the hood. But again, this isn't a promise. Performance isn't great, but you can play it. As I was editing this video, I realized there is actually a thread on the GPD XD subreddit where a guy shared a bunch of settings you can put up in your Dolphin emulator on the GPD XD Plus that make performance actually impressive. Some of the games seem to be running at 30 to 40 frames per second, which is not what I expected. It seems like your GPD XD Plus needs to be rooted for this, and the people who know Android know what I'm talking about. If you don't, this is probably above your skill set. But yeah, there's a way to play GameCube games really well on the GPD XD Plus. I didn't know that. The GPD XD Plus also comes with Android 7 as opposed to the downright ancient Android 4.4 on the original XD. Now, personally, this wasn't something that bothered me too much on the original XD, because if emulation is all you're going to be doing, 4.4 is fine. Now, this isn't all just specs. The gamepad itself has been drastically improved. Actually, let me turn down the brightness here. It's gonna blow up my camera. Jesus Christ. I've been doing videos forever and I don't know how to... come on. Let's turn that down a bit. How do I... Okay, here we go. That's better. As I was saying, it's not just all specs. The gamepad itself has been improved. The D-pad is noticeably less spongy than with the original XD, a sore point for most reviewers. And there's more travel on the action buttons as well. Also, and this might be a minor thing, but the hinge is so much smoother on this guy here. With the original XD, this thing, I broke it in already, and I'm not sure if you can hear it, but there's still like there's some resistance. It would when I first got it out of the box way back, it would creak. This is something that most people on the forums, on the subreddit, they would mention about how the hinge, there's something about the size here wasn't quite right, and it was plastic rubbing against plastic. Thankfully, I haven't damaged it by just opening and closing it, but it was something was wrong with it, and they seem to have fixed this as well. This is much better. Another thing they added to the GPD XD Plus, which is a downright unforgivable omission on the original model, was Bluetooth support. I find this very, very interesting. As I've shown in my videos in social media, the GPD XD works as a switch of emulation in that it's a self-contained portable gaming device that you can also use as a traditional console, as in hooked to a television thanks to the HDMI out. Now with Bluetooth, it's a lot easier to connect wireless controllers to get multiplayer going. This is a massive improvement. Now, granted, you can still do this with the original XD, but this requires, because here's the thing, here's what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna need an OTG cable, which I have here somewhere. You're gonna plug that to the micro USB in the back. Then to that OTG, you're gonna connect a USB hub, and then to that USB hub, you're gonna plug in dongles for 2.4 gigahertz wireless controllers. So, as you can imagine, yeah, it's not the best way to do that. So that's the GPD XD Plus. If you don't have a portable emulation machine already, look no further. The GPD XD Plus has by far the best specs and form factor in this space. It's, like I said in the beginning, the holy grail of portable emulation I've looked for my entire life. This is no exaggeration, by the way. You think about 3 PSPs for Loco Roco? And yes, while we're at it, a modded PSP might be cheaper, but it won't run nearly as many gaming platforms as the XD is capable of. Case in point, I can play DOS games on the GPD XD really well too. I was never able to run DOSBox half this good on the PSP. For that reason alone, this thing is way better. If you already have a GPD XD, I would seriously recommend selling that and upgrading to the GPD XD Plus, provided of course you are familiar enough with the Android environment that transferring the contents and settings from one device to the other won't be that much a hassle. Now, for me, it's gonna be tricky because the original GPD XD I got was 64 gigs and the one that Droidbox sent me is 32, so I'm gonna have to be a little more, let's say, I'm gonna have to take a more minimalistic approach to how many games I really need on this thing. So it's gonna take some managing, but I love this thing. It improved everything I was a little iffy about on the original XD, especially Bluetooth. That to me, it seems like such a minor thing, but to be able to be playing on this thing, then plug it into HDMI, just pass controllers around, turn them on, having them instantly sync to this thing, and then jump right into, I don't know, Mario Kart or whatever. Priceless. And that's the GPD XD Plus. If there's anything I forgot to mention here in this video, make sure to ask in the comments. And that's all the time I have for today. I'm Izzy and I'm done. If you're on my channel, there's no way you're not familiar familiar. So, for the unfamiliar, though, if you're on my channel, there's no way you're unfamiliar. Shit.